Thank you for meeting with me today, Mrs. B. I've loved working with your daughter, Bree, in class. I've noticed that she has a love for learning through her determination to always participate. Just the other day, she volunteered to participate in reading to the class, and she did a wonderful job. She is also a great friend to many of her classmates, and she notices when they're sad and tries to make them feel better. I remember a time when a boy came in from recess and he was crying because he felt like he didn't have any friends to play with, and she noticed him right away, went up and asked him if he was okay, and then later said that she was his friend and she would play with him at recess. It was really sweet, and so I'm really glad to have her in my class this year. Over the last little while, I've performed several assessments with Bree to test her phonological awareness, her reading abilities, her comprehension, and her writing abilities. I tested Bree's phonological abilities because that's the number one predictor of her reading ability. So those are tests such as rhyming or blending sounds together or hearing the specific sounds in words. And that will help determine how well she reads. I then tested her reading ability mostly through running records, which I was able to write down what words she was getting right and which ones she was missing to help better instruct how I should teach her. I also performed some writing and spelling assessments to get a good idea of what spelling words to use with her and to see how well she was hearing the individual sounds in words and how she was writing those down. Your daughter is doing extremely well. One thing she is really good at is using the sounded out strategy for a word that she doesn't automatically know. And this is something I've gotten from an interview with her. I talked to her about what she does when she doesn't know a word or what good readers do when they don't know words, and she says that they sound out words, and that's what she does too. And she does really well with this through the running records that I've given her. For example, one of them, this one she scored a 90.8% on, which means that she only missed 10% of the words. And the reason she was getting them all right is because she either automatically knew them from sight words or from reading them often, or she sounded them out correctly. And so she did really well with that strategy in all of the running records that I gave her. In that interview where I asked her about how she came to words that she didn't know, I also asked her goals that she had for her reading, and one of her goals is to know words more automatically. She doesn't want to have to sound out every single word that she comes to, which I think is a great goal, because as readers we don't sound out every single word, because then our reading is a lot slower and it doesn't make as much sense. And so, since she's really good at the sounding out strategy, but she has this goal to read words more automatically, at school I'm going to work on giving her some more sight words. She already knows all of the sight words that she needs to know for kindergarten, but it's never a bad idea to teach her more because it will improve her automaticity. And she will be more prepared for first grade because she'll already know some of the sight words for first grade. At home, I would suggest having her move away from the sounding out technique when possible and letting her use context clues from the sentence before that she's read and the pictures to help her recognize the word more automatically rather than having to sound out every letter in the word. Another thing she's really great at is she can make inferences when she is talking about what happened in a book. So most of the books that we were reading, I was having her read aloud. So they were on a kindergarten level, and so there's not a lot of inferences or conclusions you can make in those books because of the simple plot. So I decided to do an assessment where I read a book that was well above her reading level, but that she would be able to understand, and asked her questions that would make her have to make an inference or come to a conclusion that wasn't said in the book. And so I read her The Snowy Day, and then at one point the boy puts a snowball in his pocket, and then the next day he goes to get it and it's gone, and it never says anything else about it, and it just moves on within the story. So I asked her, remember when he put the snowball in his pocket and then it was gone? What do you think happened to it? And she said, right here I recorded it, that the snowball melted, and then she went even further and gave a reason as to why it melted, and she said that when snow gets somewhere warm, it melts. So she's doing awesome with making inferences, which is a really advanced technique for reading. And so I think to keep building off of this, what I'm going to do is do some more read alouds, because the books that they're reading at their reading level don't really allow for many inferences, but in these read alouds that I do to the class, the books are at a higher level, and I want to make it's called an inference chart. And so I would write down the background knowledge that I had that's on the subject of the book, and then I would write questions that I had, clues that I see in the book, and then the conclusions I can draw based on my background knowledge and the clues in the book. And this will make my thinking visible to the kindergartner so that they understand how to make inferences, and it will help them to do it in their own reading as they get better and better at it. At home, I would suggest reading aloud to Bree, and as you read aloud to her or after you've read the book, ask her questions that allow her to make conclusions based on what happened. Another thing that Bree's doing really well with is she's able to write simple sentences starting with the capital letter and ending with a period, which is exactly what we want by the end of kindergarten. Just to keep getting her further and advancing in this skill, I would like to challenge her to write more than one sentence on a topic and not use the same words such as I like. Most of the kindergartners are writing sentences saying, I like to play with my friends, or I like the color blue, and they start every single sentence that they write with I like. But I'm going to challenge her during writing time to write more than one sentence and give her guidelines to not use the words I like to see how creative she can get. At home, to help further her writing, I am a firm believer in authentic writing, so that she's writing for a purpose, but not just for a school prompt. So I would suggest giving her opportunities to write, such as having her go around and writing down what everybody wants to eat for dinner that night, or to have her write letters to her friends and family, because these will broaden her writing range and the experiences will be meaningful to her so that she's not repetitively just writing for a school purpose. As always, we want to focus a little bit on ways that we can improve, because we all have ways that we can improve. She's doing extremely well and she's on grade level or even above in most subjects, but some things that I think that would be good for her to work on is, one is long vowel patterns. She's really great at the rule where if there's an E at the end, it makes the vowel say its name. So that one she has no problem with. She got that right on her spelling assessment over and over and over again. But ones that she does have problems with are the vowel endings, or the long vowel patterns, such as AI in wait or EA in dream. So just having those two vowels next to each other are ones that she missed often on her spelling assessment. And these are way advanced. We haven't talked about them much in kindergarten, but she wasn't able to get any of those right. And so that's my next step with her. So the rule when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking, is really common, but there's way too many exceptions to that rule for me to teach it to her. So at school, I'm going to work with Bree and the students in her guided reading group who are also ready to learn this more advanced vowel pattern by showing them common long vowel patterns such as the AI pattern or the EA, and have them practice reading and writing them rather than teaching them the rule. And then at home, I would suggest, just while she's reading or while you're reading to her, just pointing out those long vowel patterns as you read to her, and she'll become more familiar with those words and be able to recognize them more automatically, which is one of her goals. And then one other thing that I think would be helpful to work with is contractions. She sometimes says did instead of didn't, or didn't instead of don't. And so that will change the meaning or the tense depending on what she changes it to. And those were evident in her running records. For example, in this one, a bunch of times I wrote the word didn't underneath the word did, because she kept saying did instead of didn't. And so it didn't make sense in the story for what she was reading. And we haven't worked a whole ton with contractions, but she's ready for them. And so I plan to teach them in her guided reading group with the students who are also ready by explaining how to write them and the two words that they are putting together when they create a contraction. At home, again, I would just suggest when she's reading to point out contractions, and then also to have her, if she's ever writing something and she uses the word did not, challenge her to change it to the contraction. Or if she writes the contraction didn't, challenge her to write the two words that it makes, just so that we know that she's understanding what contractions are and how to write them. But yeah, overall, Bree is doing really well in kindergarten. She is ready for these more challenging tasks in her reading and her writing, and I hope to work with her more at school with these, and especially with her guided reading group, who is also becoming ready for these new skills. I've loved working with her, as she really loves to learn, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity we had to meet, and thank you for your cooperation and willingness to work with her at home and to give her the next steps that she is ready for.